welcome to Veteran State of Mind. I'm your host, Geraint Jones. Just got done with an absolutely banging podcast for you guys. Before we get into it, just want to say a massive thank you to the Royal British Legion for making today's episode possible. Obviously, guys, we are in the run-up to November, which is an incredibly important time for the Legion because the poppy appeal's going on. It's where a lot of the Legion gets its funds, which they then obviously pump into projects like this one. Yeah, we are sponsored by the Legion. They make this possible. Without the Legion, we wouldn't have them. They do a lot for veterans and their families. You can find out all about it down in the show notes. There's a link through there. If you want to get involved in the Poppy Appeal, if you want to help raise funds for it, there's the Poppy Runs. There's also events going on where they're trying to pass the torch onto younger people. There's events going on around the country. They're all listed down in the show notes. They've got them they've got them close to Joe's neck of the woods. There's one in Birmingham, there's one in Leeds, there's one in Manchester, there's ones in London, Cardiff, Bristol. Check them out, all down in the show notes. Let's just get into today's guest, guys, because I'm really excited to bring this one to you. This man is I came across him listening to somebody else's podcast. It's one of the American podcasts that I listened to a while ago. I think it was Zuby's podcast. And Shane is an incredible guy. He's running for governor in Georgia. He's a former, and by Georgia I mean Georgia, America, Georgia. He's a former recon Marine, saw a lot of action out there. Just a real kind of a real kind of gentleman who, and by that I mean he is a gentle man. Okay, who believes in rights, who believes in standing up for other people. We had a great chat today. I really enjoyed it. I'm going to be going on to his podcast too, which is called the Radical Podcast. So check that one out as well, guys. But yeah, let's just get into it, guys. Really enjoyed this one. Please give a very warm welcome to Mr. Shane T Hazel. But just for the listeners, he also has a face for television. I just want you all to know that. $1 million smile, broad-shouldered man. You look very American, mate, is the way that I put it. You are one of the most American men that I know.
I was going to say Neanderthal, but yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, so you are out in Georgia, America, Georgia, not fighting with Putin, Georgia, right?
Yeah. We we try to stay away from that. Although I imagine you guys know that a lot of the people here believe that we are in this eternal fight with Putin and Russia, and it's absolutely insanity.
Yeah. We talk about that, mate. I had a really difficult time in distilling down today what to kind of talk about because I listened to your pod. You got Radical Pods, great. I've listened to you being guest. I think it was on Zuby's pod, but that I first heard you. But I thought there's a great opportunity here. Because I'm kind of like, I don't really know where I am politically, except for my politics are. Just leave me alone, right?
Yeah.
But you are a lot more of an expert on the kind of like the definitions, the way that things could work, and all of that kind of thing. I mean, I hope you are, mate, because you're going to be governor soon. So I hope you know this stuff. Although apparently,
I have some ideas for sure.
Apparently, it's not a prerequisite for the job to know what you are doing, so you'll probably be all right. So there's a few things that I really want to kind of get into you about natural rights and your kind of philosophies. But before we get into that, mate, you were a recon Marine. That doesn't happen by accident. So can you tell us a bit more about your kind of like the childhood and the path into the Marine Corps for you and into special operations in particular?
Yeah, sure, brother. It was, I grew up in kind of an area in Georgia that was a bunch of transplants from all over the place. It wasn't, most people that lived in that area weren't even from that area. They were from what we could consider the Midwest, which is like the central northern part of the country. And, my parents were, from Michigan. I was from Michigan, and they were very, red, white, and blue. They believed in the idea that, peace and liberty and all of these things were ingrained in us. We kind of have this thing in America where, we don't like being told what to do, and we believe in, individual freedom. It's like, as long as that person over there isn't hurting anybody, they should be free to kind of live their life and just leave people be. So you grow up in that system, and over the years, the indoctrination from that system, I mean, it was spectacular. Just, every day you're standing up, you're pledging allegiance to a flag, you sing all of the country's, basically the scripture hymns, and they talk about how, great and amazing and star-spangly awesome we are. And, over the years, you just kind of believe that America doesn't do wrong, that we are just this shining, force in the world for good and for liberty and people's rights. And, fast forward, I was third year into university, and 9/11 happened. I was already, through my third year, about to start my fourth. And I said, I got to do something. I got to go and serve this nation. I got to make sure that, the people will have their rights basically tomorrow. And boy, I ran off and joined the Marine Corps and got into force reconnaissance and did a couple of tours with those guys, and was there right up until we became MARSOC in 2006. And I'll tell you, it was one of those things where I always had a drive, man. I grew up playing sports in a top tier team down here in football and American football, and it was the hard work and the dedication and the understanding your mental limits, or what set the bar for what you can accomplish, was already ingrained in me. So to really go out and be part of something special, I mean, in terms of the special operations type of guys that are a little differently oriented and challenged and kind of self-motivated, was kind of, I guess, just the natural step for me to go into and get on there, because I wanted to do amazing things. And those were the guys that I thought were doing the amazing things in the Marine Corps. So that's kind of how I got into to that realm to begin with.
Were you looking at a military career before 9/11, or was it purely because of 9/11 that you went into the military?
No. I actually, I had a cousin who was quite a few years older than I was, that was an Air Wing Marine. And I always thought the world of them. And, when it was time, 1998, geez, 2018, 1998, when I was graduating high school, the military was there, and I thought, they're not doing anything. They're hanging out, they're throwing rocks, and it's not really a place where I'm going to be utilized to my maximum potential. So unless there's really a fight that needs fighting, I'm going to go and increase my skill set. And so I decided to go to university instead. And that's, that's why it changed about my, coming into my fourth years, because I was like, we're going to war. Like, I know that they're going to need some guys that can stand up and that can lead and that can fight. And that was really kind of the mindset shift. What
position did you play in football?
I played a bunch of them, man. I started out as a 10-year-old, so offensive line, defensive line, and then as some of the guys got bigger than I was, and we had some big guys. I started playing things like tackle and guard, and then outside linebacker and defensive end, and some of the faster, bigger guy positions. But yeah, that's where I played.
So how tall are you? You look a big guy.
About 6 feet. About 210 in terms of pounds. Anyway, I don't know what that translated into in terms of kilos.
Hunky, mate. So you know what, mate? I don't want to go too off topic here, but I think this is worth just saying. It's like, I actually had a really kind of like nice moment the other week where I got a subscription to be able to watch college football from the UK, and seeing stadiums packed full of people, and seeing there, and then that day as well, there was loads of close games that ended in pitch invasions with like last minute kicks. And it just made me like, it lifted my mood so much. And it stayed like that since, because like, I just thought, you know what, this is what it's supposed to be. It's people not giving a fuck, people like shoulder to shoulder, people just living life without fear. And the college football was was probably not the place that I would have thought that I'd have my, my kind of, my Obi-Wan Kenobi moment when it's like, it gives me hope, it's like, but it was called college football, man. And like you're down in Georgia now, right? Correct. So you're like deep in college football land.
The university that I actually graduated from is number one right now. The Georgia Bulldogs are kicking ass this year.
You went to Georgia. That's awesome.
I did. Yeah, and yeah, I agree with you. I didn't watch last year because I thought it was ridiculous, and I was,
Same.
it's one of those things. I don't pour my life into sports in terms of being a fan. A lot of people will let it affect them, but college football is one of those things down here that is still feels like somewhat pure of sport, and it's kind of quite a religion almost. On game day down here, people have very set paths, and I agree with you. This year to see the emergence and the comeback of the crowd and people coming together and just packing stadiums of 90, 100, 120,000 people week after week after week, and nothing's going on. Yeah. It's just people going to events, being together. It doesn't matter, if they're vaccinated, if they're not vaccinated, if they want to wear a mask, if they don't want to wear a mask. We just accept each other, and holy cow, we can continue life on this planet. I know it's a crazy idea for a lot of people out there, but it's really good to see.
And they haven't all died, we're about 8 weeks in the season and they're still alive. The other thing I love about it as well, mate, is something I've come to appreciate every year as I get older, is I look at those, because they're not kids, they're young men, but, kind of kids. And you're like, especially when it comes down to the last play of a game, which college football is great for coming down to the last minute. And I'm like, you think about how much effort went into getting to that time, all the reps they did, all the way from the pee-wee football, and then how many coaches were involved in that, how many times did their parents drive them to the practice. So that Texas the Aggies game the other day against Alabama, the last second kick to win the game, so much had gone into putting that lad in that position, and he didn't bottle it and he kicked it. But then that day I'd watched some other games where the kicker did bottle it at the end, and I just find that fascinating, mate. That that so much has gone into that, but also, kind of sitting in my rocking chair, just thinking wow, that is a moment that kid has got for the rest of his life, and I love that, mate. It's a humanity moment.
Yeah, if you've ever, one of my best friends was a kicker growing up, and so there were plenty of games where it came down to that, some close calls, and to have, somebody who is typically not even on the field and is kind of considered, in America, they're kind of part of the team, but they don't get hit and they don't tackle anybody. So but no, you're exactly right. The blood, sweat, and tears and the moments, and just the history that goes into making one of those moments. And then, the idea that you are going to have to live with your performance afterwards is, it's all part of the sport. It's beautiful.
And that set you up well for the Marine Corps.
Oh, man. The trials and tribulations. Played for a high school down here called Brookwood, and we won the state back in 1996. Wow. We're, I think, Final Four in 97. And really before that, we didn't ever lose. We just kept winning championships, from 6-7 years old on. And it was just a powerhouse team, and to put in the work and the dedication and the effort, we did so much. I didn't want to play in college. And, I knew what it was going to take to play at a collegiate level. And I was just like, nah, I'm good. I don't need this. I need to go and live some life, basically. And that's the, the testament is this is a lifestyle. If you want to live this is what you're going to be basically married to and dedicated to, and pour your time and effort into, 24/7. So yeah, it definitely set me up for understanding what type of lifestyle I was going into.
So you get into the Marine Corps, then you do the special operations training. Obviously we could go into that more detail, but I want to get to your operations. So when did you go out to Iraq, and how were you feeling to be going out there?
The first time around, I was fairly excited. We went into Kuwait in late 2002, early 2003, made a bunch of fobs down there, around the city and closer to the border there in Iraq. And, that was kind of an exciting time as a young I think I went in to Kuwait as a Lance Corporal. So, just E3 for us, of, third rank up, and came out of there as a corporal. And so it was, it was kind of a real moment, it was another generation going to a battlefield. And, we knew we were headed to grab Saddam and do, what America does, right? This is when I was still kind of under the auspicious, guys that we were doing great things in the world for, keeping peace and freedom and all that kind of stuff. So once we kicked it off, I think it was like March 18th for us. As reconnaissance, we were kind of tasked with taking this place called Safwan Hill, which was a radar site in the south of Iraq. It was one of the higher elevations. And really, by the time, we were there, man, they had already bombed the shit out of it, and like it was destroyed. And, reconnaissance at that point, especially for force reconnaissance, which is deeper instead of just battlefield reconnaissance, we got overrun. It was, our own battalion was like, man, we're beating feet and we're headed up as fast as we can to get to Baghdad. And, you had the Battle of Nasiriyah on the way up, and then, kind of some ancillary battles, some Tikrit, Najaf was going off on the West Coast. And I mean, it was an experience, but like at that point, we got recalled, our platoon specifically got recalled to come back to the U.S. and start the next workup for the next deployment before the rest of the company did, because we were going to be assigned to this thing called a Marine Expeditionary Unit, and that was the 11th MU at that time. And so we left early. I think it was May that we left, and really the big battle was over, and we felt like we were victorious. We thought, hey, this is a wrap. We're going to go out on this next Marine Expeditionary Unit, and we're going to sail around the Pacific, hit the islands and ports, and have a good time. And like, Iraq's done, brother. And it was, boy, how wrong were we, man? And so, like,
pretty wrong.
I mean, super wrong. So yeah, that was the first excursion over there, and it wasn't, there were some hardships, but really, it went faster than I thought it was going to go. It went smoother than I thought it was going to go. We had a couple of casualties, and I'm not like fatalities, but just a couple casualties. And really, outside of that, nothing major went on. For our entire company during the first, I guess, phase of those operations. So it kind of just seemed almost like a fairy tale.
Mate, what's kind of funny to me is that you mentioned Safwan Hill there. I know that we have at least one listener who has jerked off on that hill while he's been pulling lowly nights of guard duty. That's what I always find so fascinating about talking to other veterans, especially like American veterans in the Marine Corps, because the Brits and Marines have overlapped so much in the war on terror that it's always just funny to be like, it's like, that we have these stories that are just being in the same places but at different times. And I'm sure there's been many a listener here that's been on Safwan Hill pondering why they ever joined the staring out into black nothingness, pondering what the hell they were doing in Iraq. So I'm glad to know everyone can blame Shane for that happening, because it was him and his mates who went to take her. So if you hated being on Safwan Hill, this is a man to blame. When you were out there then, I suppose there was no sense of, at that point, there was no doubt, no questions in your mind about like, what is this really kind of going on?
No, everything was kind of going faster than, planned. And, at the end of the day, we thought we had done some good things. Obviously, you do see some things over there that, will just be in your psyche, as a first time combat vet type of deal where, when you see the hulks and hulks of cars when you're going up, what do they call it? The death highway, into Iraq, like, that's kind of haunting. But at the same time, that was from, the Gulf War back in the day. And, I guess, outside of that, I really, you do see some destruction and some death and some fighting and all that kind of stuff. But it's, if you're mentally prepared, and I was a little bit older in terms of being a younger guy in one of these positions, a little more, I guess, mentally stable to be able to handle some of these things. I really, I processed it, put it probably deep down somewhere and kept going. Just kind of thought like, this is all part of the experience and this is what you signed up for. So yeah, nothing out of the ordinary the first time.
So the second time then you're saying you're supposed to go out on the Mew, you're supposed to go out some nice ports. I'm guessing things didn't go to plan in Iraq, so they needed reinforcements. Is that the kind of deal you could say?
Yeah, so basically,
he's smiling here. It's like, yeah, that was the deal.
Yeah, man, we hit Hawaii on the way over for a little bit of field training. And to this day, I've spent more nights camping in the fields in Hawaii than I ever have, like at port or something. So a little jaded from that. And so, yeah, we sailed straight over to Kuwait. Took us about a month to get there. And this was April of 2004. We went into straight up to Najaf. We never saw the ships again. This was the 11th MEU. And on the day that we turned over from the Army and the Spanish that was in the Najaf area, the Combined Arms and Tactics team, the CAT team, went down and picked a fight with Muqtada al-Sadr's Mahdi militia in Najaf, and that was a big battle. We had, the Marines were fired up; they were ready to go in and kick the crap out of these guys. And there's a place called the Imam Ali Shrine down there, and it's got the Cemetery of Abraham, and it is absolutely monstrous. It is a sight to see in terms of just scale. I mean, it goes on for, I think, miles, and it is, there are catacombs and everything else. And there's some old city and some new city surrounding it. And so, going house to house and fighting underground, like that was one of the things, subterranean type of fighting that I don't think most people were ready for. And it was hot. I mean, August in southern Iraq, I mean, it is insanity, and, trying to launch a fight during that time. So we got through to the Imam Ali Shrine, and we had everybody surrounded, and the guys from the Pentagon and some politicians and bureaucrats started to negotiate peace with this guy named Muqtada al-Sadr and the what was his Imam sustain Khomeini, not Khomeini, that's Iraq. Grand Ayatollah, what the heck is his name? Anyway, they brokered a peace deal, and the Marines had to watch all these fighters walk out of the shrine. And they were like, we were about to drop JDAMs on that place and just level it and be done. Right. And I think that's the first place where I was just like, what are we doing? If we're not here to absolutely decimate and destroy the enemy, then what the hell are we doing here? And the fact that we have people, that in DC or Washington that can make these decisions during the middle of a fight where, guys are, having their lives changed, possibly giving their lives. It was a real moment where I said, the question mark came up, the light bulb went on, and I was like, oh, something's not right here.
Yeah, mate, I had exactly the same moment in Basra 2007 when we were told to release all the people that we just spent all that time capturing, losing people doing it. We had to release them. And you're like, and then, now we're leaving the city. What's going on here? Was that obviously something that you questioned? But was it something that was it this term moral injury gets kind of passed around now and stuff? Was it something that kind of like would literally physically hurt you to see that happen?
Yeah, I mean, literally. I mean, to have, seen the destruction and everything that was happening in that area. I mean, yeah, I know you guys have seen, some of the cities and everything else that, we've destroyed over there. And you start to see like the homes and the lives that are changed. And for what? Like those guys are still running around. So I had a real moral objection to like what was going on, because I thought, at the time, these are the bad guys and they should absolutely be destroyed so that they can't do bad in the world anymore. And like, isn't that why we're here? And, to answer your own question and be like, obviously there are some other, initiatives going on that we're not privy to. And when you're not privy to the, to the mission at that point, and you're in the dark and you're doing something for people in the dark, that raises some serious concerns.
Do I remember correctly that you were handed a book on that deployment as well that made a big difference to you? Yeah.
So fast forward, we had just come off of the battlefield and we were attached to the ODA component, Green Berets, so that we could kind of learn their mission as we were about to start contributing to SOCOM, because the Marine Corps didn't contribute to SOCOM before 2006. So we were charged with going down there and learning some things from the ODA guys. And I think it was the end last week of October. So coming up here on Pete, too many years ago, anniversary. We got tasked with going up and doing the reconnaissance for the Battle of Fallujah, the second one. And so we left Najaf, drove up to Fallujah, and I think we got there in the middle of the night, and some colonel came out and said, "I hear you guys are looking for a fight. You came to the right place." And so obviously the battle in Fallujah ensues early November, and we get pulled in from doing reconnaissance to doing combat replacements for 3-1 or Battalion 3-1, 1-3, 1-8, and a few others, because they were taking heavy losses going in and fighting house to house. So we started fighting house to house with them. And to see, obviously up close and personal, the grunt work and kicking in doors and losing guys and destroying buildings and, taking on quote unquote bad guys. Obviously this is where, the psyche really starts to change, because I already have the question in the back of my mind. And, it's daunting as we are going house to house. Is like, all right, what are we doing this for? Because are they at some point, are we going to have these guys up against the wall, and are we going to let them go again? So that didn't happen. That was one of those no holds barred, destroy everything, and happy hunting, basically, is what they said to us. After that was over, though, we went back to the MEC, the MEK, which is the base there, just to the east of Fallujah. And on my bunk, my rack there, one of my buddies had put one of John Taylor Gatto's books. He was a 30-year school teacher out of New York, and the book was The Underground History of American Education. It's great, phenomenal book, and at the right time too. The book speaks about how the American education system, and really all colonial type education system, so from Europe to America to lots of Africa, are based on the Prussian model of the 1700s, which was a bunch of Fabian socialists, and it was to sculpt and indoctrinate so that you had good little soldiers, you had people who had kind of a shared culture, shared language, that could go out and work in the shops and the machines, that were really basically easily controllable by a central authority, instant obedience to orders. And when you kind of dive into especially the soldiering aspect of that book, and you are halfway around the world fighting a battle for a state with no clear mission anymore, and it starts to hit home that, boy, you're a product of this Fabian socialist government youth indoctrination. Like, it really changes your life. It changes what you're doing, what you're thinking, and the questions that you have going forward from there. So yeah, that one book, and for your audience, anybody that wants to read John Taylor Gatto, he's got an exceptional amount of books. He's passed away in recent years, but I think most people are primed to understand that the government indoctrination system is something that has failed not only the U.S., but I think most of the world.
How did that feel then to like, it's, I've always kind of felt like it's a bit like if you find out, I mean, hopefully you haven't been through this, but I know most people probably have, is when you find out you're being cheated on by a girlfriend or something. And it's that feeling of like, oh, I'm a fucking idiot. How did I not see this? I mean, that's how it felt for me. Like, because you have the right red, white, and blue. I don't know whatever the equivalent would be for us, but I was like, Britain is the best country in the world. We do no wrong. If you were fucking have an issue with our empire, you're just ungrateful. We did that for the benefit of everybody else. What are you talking about? And then it was like, it starts to kind of peel away until it got to the point where I was like, oh no, this isn't just a bit blurry. This is total bollocks. So like, how did that feel for you? Like, was to kind of have that come to Jesus moment?
Oh, it hurt. And the thing is it wasn't a slow Band-Aid pull. You know what I mean? Like when you're ripping off Band-Aids, you want to like, show me everything now. Right. Yeah. And I don't know, maybe my little mind couldn't handle that. But it was a slow pull, and, I was I was aghast. It was just to try to put into words the disappointment that you feel in that moment, to have kind of your whole person, your whole image, your whole character, whatever it is, kind of wrapped up in this idea that I'm a United States Marine. That was a big deal for me at the time, and I thought it was kind of a benchmark, just to find out that, man, all of the work, the blood, sweat, and tears that it took to get to that point, it's just, they were all built on lies. I mean, it's like, taking your legs out from underneath you, it's gut wrenching. But the following 5 to 10 years is where it really, really, I don't know where, you sour first, you're mad as hell. And you want to tell the whole world about how, they're fucking wrong. But for me, like, you just keep learning. And the fact that you get through that sourhood, you start to see other people, other people's humanity again, and understand that they're a cog in the same system you were a cog, and it's going to take the time, which is the key factor for anybody. You can't change people's minds. They got to be willing to change it themselves. You can introduce them to ideas and plant seeds. So that's that transition is, if you got listeners out there, if you can get through the anger part, and you can get into the humanitarian part, the empathy part again, which is tough for a lot of us that are very mission driven and oriented to begin with. That's a place where I've found real fruit in terms of helping other people see reality, and taking the guise of the state and this murder cult that we have, away.
Do you feel like there's some kind of price of atonement that you have to pay for that phase of your life?
Yeah, I think I'm paying for it now.
What, on this podcast? This is a good timing. Come on.
Yeah, no. Being involved in the liberty movement here in the States, and really kind of internationally, I guess, being involved in that, and taking the time to and the energy into politics that I have, it takes away from your personal time with your kids and your family. It's time you'll never get back. And so my atonement is, going to rest with me my entire life until I feel like we're much freer, until we're not launching, wars for the banks and the MIC and the ridiculous politicians that are out there for power, until we have, peace and liberty and consentful interactions with each other. This is going to be the rest of my life, and I think that's the atonement that has to be paid, because once you see it, you can't unsee it, and at that point, it's your responsibility, especially given our position, where we've made the critical error in the first place, even unbeknownst to us, to go out there and try to right a lot of the wrongs.
And I want to make clear for people as well that Shane is a gun owner, and I'm pretty sure if you went onto Shane's property and tried to do something to his family, he would fucking shoot you in the face. So it's not that you are opposed to violence entirely, is it? It's just that you don't want to go and inflict it on anybody else. It's just a defensive violence.
Yeah. What do they say? It's best to be a warrior in the garden, right? And instead of a gardener in the war. So. Yeah, I've got, I don't talk about it a lot just because I don't want the bureaucrats beating down my door. But yeah, I've got some land away from everybody. I mean, I live on the side of a mountain in North Georgia, and I'm happy to not have neighbors that I can see, like they're way off behind other gates and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, I don't care to be a part of whatever is going on, and I don't want anybody to really come out here that's uninvited. So I'm not a I don't know what's the word, a pacifist.
Yeah.
I'm definitely one of those people that just understands just how scary and awful that type of violence can be, and tried to remove myself from that equation as much as possible.
Yeah, I entirely agree. And I think, to be honest, mate, one of the things that some people will be disappointed in, they'll see what's been going on in America, and they're like, why hasn't people stood up and been violent to stop this happening? And I actually kind of think, I almost applaud the resolve of people have got for not resorting to violence. Like the only people I can see cheering to like, oh, let's have a fucking war on American soil are pogues and fucking people who are in the military but were never in combat, or people who are 13-year-old boys. And look, if I was a 13-year-old boy, I'd probably be saying the same fucking thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's ingrained in us, right? It's like, oh, they poked us in the chest, let's fuck them up, right? And like, we've got this badass military, let's use it. We spend billions and billions of dollars on it. Like, what are we doing sitting around on our hands right now? And I agree with you. I've said this multiple times to people, is like, they're very disappointed about the response of armed America in this entire thing. And I think it just goes to prove to the world that the people who are very well armed can sit in a silent position of power. Mm-hmm. And that comes with understanding what real power is like, listen, we want peace. Mm-hmm. I say begging, we're telling you guys, here's the line in the sand. We don't want to escalate this into a kinetic situation. And I think that resolve is going to be something that hopefully they write about in history books. Is the American populace was one of the most peaceful times during a tyrannical, an attempted tyrannical takeover. And it wasn't because they were pacifists, it's because a lot of them knew the cost and the tribulations of what a real kinetic civil war in America would look like. And they have done anything and everything in their power to avoid that.
And you know what's funny to me, mate, is we're going to talk about anarchy in a minute, but people always say, oh, if we had anarchy, people would just be shooting and murdering and raping each other. Look, man, like there's a massive armed population in America. If that's not happening now, it's not going to happen under anarchy. Like, it's just not. So I just want to give you, in the UK, if you said someone was an anarchist, they're going to picture someone who hasn't had a bath in 6 months. They got dreadlocks, probably green dreadlocks, and they go around defacing statues of Winston Churchill, right? That's what someone an anarchist. Now, can you explain to me what anarchy actually means and why you believe in it?
Yeah, let's define what those people have in their imagination first. And I think language is super important. Chaos is what we're talking about. Agents of chaos, and they come in all shapes, forms, and sizes. Anybody who can be bought and paid for, they can go out and do exactly those things in terms of disrupting life, whether it's murder, rape, assault, kidnapping, coercion, property damage, vandalism, trespassing, you name it. That's chaos. We have chaos now, and we have more government than we've ever had, right? So there's a direct correlation to chaos and control by the state. Anarchy, in its purest definition, at least enjoys the space of neutrality. And anarchy just means no rulers, right? Like, we're born free human beings. So we think, right? And so we talk about, so we wish for. But anarchy just means no rulers, good or bad, in the hands of, depending on who has the freedom, right? And so as an anarchist, it's not that I don't believe that you shouldn't be able to practice your communism. It's not that I don't believe that you shouldn't be able to practice your democracy. I just think that every transaction that we have as human beings should be consentful. It's what separates sex from rape, right? There's no difference whether it's the state or your non-state friend that you're having a transaction with. Everything that you do should have your right of conscience behind it. You should be able to say, yes, I agree with this, and maybe I'll put some voluntary funding or resources or time to it, versus you are compelled by the state, whether you agree with what we're going to do with your life, liberty, and property. And that's really anarchy. It's not that we want chaos. No, we want peace. And we think that, peace is associated with less control and less chaos by the state. So a lot of people, that's when they try to get into the nitty gritty. And, in America, especially in libertarianism, they say, roads, right? Like, what are we going to do? How are we going to build roads? And I always talk to people, and I try to keep it as high level as possible, because the ingenuity and the genius behind people to solve problems is at at the individual level. It's at the small community level. It's not that these people who have been put in a position of power are magical or smarter or anything like that. They just have more connected friends with deeper pockets that can influence votes and media and things like that. So it's like, if we all perceive the people who have power as murderers and thieves to begin with, then why the hell are we giving them any more control over our lives? And
you know what, mate? If anyone thinks that the government solve roads issues, come up to my fucking house. And when your axles are absolutely fucked because out there roads haven't been repaired in 10 years, then we'll talk. Mate, because the other thing as well is I know people because I'm kind of playing a bit. I find it really hard to play devil's advocate though because I think the position is so fucking stupid. But I'll do my best. So one of the things that people say is like, oh well, if you had that, people would just there's going to be murderers and there's going to be rapists and stuff. And I just say like, well, they exist now, and I don't think anyone that's like kind of like very libertarian minded is saying that those things are going to go away. It's just that they'll be at an individual level rather than a state level. Is that correct?
Yeah, a lot to unpack. You're absolutely correct. Obviously, the better funded an organization is, the more it can do. And if they're in the business of thieving and murdering, they can do it at higher, more efficient levels. And that's obviously what we absolutely don't want.
Noble listeners, please lend me your ears for a quick moment while we talk about today's sponsors. As you know, no sponsors, no podcasts. We appreciate these guys very much. They're both veteran-owned, veteran-operated. Combat Fuel, you've been hearing me talk about them a lot. And the reason why is because I like them a lot. Products are fantastic. I use, to be honest, it's all I use now. I use the vegan protein. I get a few scoops of that in a day because I go by the old rule with the protein. Obviously, try and get a gram of protein for every pound of body weight. So when you're as massive as me with these big old muscles, you need to get a lot of protein in. So I go for the vegan protein from Combat Fuel. And then before my workouts, I either use the pumped up pre-workout, which doesn't have caffeine. So if I'm having a later in the day workout, that's what I use. Or in the day, I'll use the regular pre-workout. I've tried a bunch of the flavors, haven't found one I don't like. And I massively recommend the peanut butter cups, which go amazingly with a nice brew or a wet if you're a Royal Marine. Get them guys at Combat Fuel. And also combat-fuel.co.uk. They're linked up in the show notes. And I want to say a thank you to the long-time supporter of the podcast, Zulu Alpha Strap Company, Bombers Watch Straps for alley blokes. If you don't know what that is by now, what have you been listening to? Bombers Watch Straps for alley blokes basically means a distinguished, fine-looking strap for your timepiece. As you know, guys, if you're in the military or if you're in any kind of law enforcement, I'm sure we still have a few law enforcement people listening to this, despite the bashing that they get from me and Joe. If you're in any job that's rugged, manual, you need a good watch strap on your timepiece, because otherwise you will be losing your timepiece, as has happened to me in the past. Not anymore, because I'm using Zulu Alpha Straps. All kinds of patterns, all kinds of colours. Check them out at Zulu Alpha Straps. Website and everything's linked up down in the show notes, guys. Both of these companies operated by veterans. Both of them give back to veterans, including this podcast. They make it possible. Please go out and support them. All right, let's get back to the episode. Right. So when it comes to, let's say that we were living in anarchy, right? And you've got your private property, you've got your family on there. And then let's say that the property over, somebody comes onto that property and murders someone on that property. How would that get taken care of under anarchy?
So the best example of being able to, have an anarchy type situation, it doesn't mean that there's no law enforcement. It doesn't mean that there's no police and no fire departments, no roads. It means that you are paying for service, right? And it's not that service will be rejected to the people who don't pay for it, because obviously if you're living in a community, you're not absent to what goes on in that community, just because maybe you're not consenting to do what they want to do with, let's say, the flower gardens that they want to put up, or whatever the case is. So let's say your neighbor's murdered. We live in an anarchist state. It doesn't mean that you haven't paid into a private police force where, I talk about this all the time. And this is one of the last things that one of my good friends was like, I really have a trouble understanding how you would enforce even basic laws like murder, rape, assault, and kidnapping in an anarchy type situation. And given the difference, how do you feel about police in America now? Do you feel safer when they're behind you? Do you feel safer when they're, speeding or taking, speeding traps on the side of the road? Do you feel safer with your interactions with them now? And of course not. Okay, so then what is the alternative? What is the best case scenario for a private type of force? And here in the States, we have a company that just crushes customer service with Chick-fil-A, right? Like Chick-fil-A in America.
Oh, mate, that's some good chicken.
Yeah, it's God's chicken, right? And so, they go out of their way to make sure that you have the absolute best experience in the world. And it's like, how come we can't have a Chick-fil-A in terms of a police force, right? So if they're providing you excellent service, they've gotten rid of the pedos and the murders and the thieves and things like that in your local area, and they're not harassing peaceful people, they're not caging peaceful people, they're not murdering peaceful people, then you're going to want to pay those people's salary, right? Like I am.
I'm paying well.
Absolutely. And then at the end of that, or the other side of that is, let's just say they start adopting or getting out of line again. Well, you're also free to not pay them for their service. Or, the competition in that market space is where, hey, listen, I actually prefer, these guys over here who are going to do either more or less for security purposes. And it is above the board. It's not like because you're poor and you go murder somebody that you're not going to, have to deal with, your crimes and the reaction to what you've done to that community. Like that's never been the case in history. And, we've really, to look at an empire state like America, like the UK, people got dealt with a long time before we were empires. And a lot of times it was through voluntary consent with the local community and the people that paid their salaries.
Yeah, because the thing is, mate, like across the country in America, you will find some places where, like Georgia, I'm sure there's very different political opinions on some things than, say, New York. But
yeah,
what everyone across the country is going to agree on, rape's not okay, murder's not okay, pedophilia is not okay.
Yeah.
There's so you can have it's not like you're going to go to somewhere and they're like, oh no, we're all for fucking kids and they're murdering them here. That's not going to happen anywhere.
Yeah. And if it does happen, it's going to be on that little island down off the coast of Florida, Epstein Island, where they have their own security anyway, right?
Yeah. Which happens anyway, unfortunately. So again, it's not like this stuff because people would say, oh, what if it opens a door for that? As if that's not happening right now.
Yeah.
So a lot of this stuff ties into individualism. It ties into individual rights. Can you explain to us what natural rights are?
Yeah. So, it's very simple. Is you're born into this world, and when Rothbard does a great job at talking about this. You're born with the facilities of this meat sack, basically, that you're born into this world with. You have your most valuable thing in this world is your time and what you do with your time. So if you can trade your time for work or skill sets or paid or shelter or water, you are effectively trading your most valuable asset for something else. It's a consentful interaction, hopefully most of the time. So what comes from that? What comes from that is your life, your liberty, and your property. Do you have the natural right of defense? Of course you do. It's self-preservation. It is maybe the first natural right. You have a right to preserve not only yourself, but what you've traded yourself for. So your time being yourself, you've traded yourself and time for, I don't know, dollars, for shelter, for water, for, cameras, for lights, for property. And nobody else did that for you. You obviously have a claim to your life. You have a claim to your time, or the thing that you trade your time for, which we call property. And those things are your rights. You have a right then to also secure those things and be private in nature, right? So a natural and inalienable right requires nothing of anybody else. So a lot of times in the States, they'll reference the Bill of Rights. You have the right of conscience, which is not listed in our Bill of Rights. You have the right of your belief system. So, whether it's religion or not having a religion, whatever that is your right of conscience. You have the right to speak. You have the right to print. You have the right to take your message and put it out on whatever platform that you can, if you can afford to do it. You have the right, obviously, in the states to keep and bear arms, but basically more along the lines of self-preservation. If we really boil it down, you have the right to be secure in your person, property, and effects is what is listed in the Fourth Amendment here in the United States, and that's just your privacy and your property, so that nobody can come out here, tell you that you have to do something with your life, liberty, and property, that with your house, the way you live your life, as long as you're a peaceful person with your family. And then you get into some of the more positive rights, right? Like in a society, you have obviously a right to stand trial and face your accusers and things like that. But the natural right system is what I've listed first. You also have things like the right to move, the right to travel, just because, we're human beings, we have legs, and that's what we were made to do. It's what is observable in natural law is a natural right.
One of the things that I really liked, I heard you say on a podcast, is because this is something that I really, really kind of like want to underline for people, is that you do have rights, but with those rights come responsibility. So, for instance, I should not be locked down in my house when there's a pandemic going on. One of the problems I think we have in society at the moment, mate, is this binary way of thinking. Of me saying I have the right to leave my house if I want, doesn't mean I have to go and leave my house if I want. It just means that I'm not put in a cage if I do.
That's right.
And this is one of the big things. Is that something that you find is a problem in the States with getting people to understand this balance of, yes, you have rights, but yes, you have responsibility that comes with it. And if you don't exercise that responsibility, you probably don't deserve those rights. Yeah.
If you abuse your rights and violate other people's rights, I have no sympathy for you, right? If you're going out there and doing something just because you can, and you're not thinking about the responsibility side of it and the cause and the action, on the other side, it's like, we're a jiu-jitsu family, man. And, my kids have been in jiu-jitsu since they were 3. So, as much mat time as I can get, with those guys, it's a close community. And obviously, with COVID, we had to take a break for a few months over here. And luckily it was just a few months, but during that time, our instructor said, "Hey, listen, I'm going to do the responsible thing, and I'm going to shut down the gym for this time, because we don't really know what we're dealing with. Until we do know what we're dealing with, we're going to err on the side of caution." And you're right. The idea that maybe there were some people that didn't want to. Do they have private basements? Do they have pads and everything else? Do they feel like they have maybe a better grip on it? I don't know. Are they hurting anybody besides themselves if they decide they want to leave their house, go over to a friend's house, and get in a session of jiu-jitsu? I don't think at that point the state should ever be given the power to contact, harass, cage, or possibly kill if people resist hard enough to that intrusion into their lives. Yeah, I agree. Responsibility is way up there. And with that, we've got to do better. Like, if we're sick as a family, or anybody has a fever or a sniffle, we don't go to the mat. Like, that's the responsibility. It's the same thing with every other right. It's like, exercise it the right way. But at the end of the day, I'm also going to be that person that says, hey, listen, they're making some different decisions. As long as they're not hurting anybody or taking their stuff, man, I really don't care. They might be a little more irresponsible than I like, but that's that fine line, is like, hey, listen, I'm never going to empower the state and say there ought to be a law or there ought to be a regulation or something that puts the force of the state behind it to where they're going to exercise it, and maybe to a critical mass state.
Man, I totally agree. Some people will always be dickheads. I would rather a dickhead with no power than a dickhead with laws and a police force behind them. It's as simple as that. People say, oh, well, if we didn't have laws, people will abuse their rights. Yeah, people will abuse their positions. So let's not give them an army. Let's not give them a police force. Like, that's the point. Like, yeah, people will be people.
Yeah.
So damage limitation is the key on a lot of this stuff. Mate, on the subject of politicians, I'd love to get your perspective on this.
They're dirty as fuck.
And not in the good way. Although, who knows? They probably are on that one. They go a bit too far for me, though.
Maybe.
We're not into that island stuff. Again...
that's right.
The Afghanistan pullout, obviously, from the most boot Marine in the world. Like, you've said this on your podcast. Like, you don't think this was a coincidence how it was done, right?
Oh, no. And real quick, thanks if you got anybody in your audience that is one of the Brits that went in there and saved a bunch of Americans when the Americans were, really screwing the pooch for, I guess kind of the propaganda machine over here. Big thank you to all the guys that went out.
We do have them. We do have them, mate. There are some of them that are on here. We're going to have them on the podcast soon. And yes, I second what you're saying, mate, because, there's so many people involved with that. And again, I think you're right, mate, to single them out for praise. And how was that for you to see that situation going on?
I knew it was coming, and I think I kind of vocalize a lot of my anger and thoughts. First and foremost, for the United States, the president isn't a military man. He's not, and obviously he's a muppet in this day and age, and almost a slap in the face as a decrepit old empire. He's a decrepit old man. The G4 and the G5 and the Pentagon are the people who are logistics and future plans for the United States. To act like these guys aren't squarely responsible as the chiefs and their departments in the G4 and the G5 after I think it's almost 20 years of not having an ironclad plan of retrograde and withdrawal. Like, fuck me, dude. They're like, are we really going to sit here and blame a president for this, or are we going to sit there and go, yeah, you know what? This is probably up to the generals and the colonels and the command staff. I see this, this withdrawal as more of a point in terms of crippling the empire, of taking the general trust out of the American military from the population. It's also meant to obviously weaken the president of the United States, which, as a libertarian, I think it's got too much power anyway. But in terms of militarily, this is just one of those things where if people are going to point fingers at each other, anybody with a military mindset really understands what's happened here. So embarrassing. We see it coming miles away. Yeah. Barack Obama ran on peace. George W. Bush ran on peace. Donald Trump ran on peace, and so did Biden. So the idea, is if you put yourself in a president's, in their cabinet, in their campaigns, shoes, what you're looking at is somebody who's trying to get elected. So peace sells. So let's get elected, right? And then he gets into office, and he is the commander in chief of, troops deployed throughout the region. Withdrawal from that is always going to be messy. Always.
Just explain that to people, mate.
So the combination of the Pentagon and all of those industries that want and benefit from warfare, right? They're going to make you look like a jackass, somebody that doesn't know what they're doing, somebody that made the wrong call, because now their promotions, their medals, their livelihoods, their future in terms of, when they go off and they work for, giant corporations on the board of directors and get paid ridiculous salaries. Like, this is all at risk. So they see this and they go, well, if I end this war, I'm probably going to look like a jackass. My ratings are probably going to fall. And let's say they're a first termer. They want to get reelected. They don't want that hanging over their head, so they don't withdraw. They get into their second term. Barack Obama is a great case for this. He could have withdrawn at any time. Did he want to? No, because at that point, then it would have been his legacy. And his legacy is, look, he botched the withdrawal from Afghanistan, from Iraq, from other parts of the Middle East. He doesn't want that as his legacy. So what does he do? He leaves it for the next guy to deal with. And, it can be said that, the same thing happened with Donald Trump. Donald Trump brokered the peace deal with the Taliban and left the actual execution of the withdrawal to Joe Biden after, he didn't win. So it's this whole system just set up to make, I guess to give him some type of out, a scapegoat, basically, where nobody's ever held accountable.
The ray of light in all of that is that you said peace sells. I don't think most people want us to be at war in these places constantly.
No.
We get talked into it with a very convincing justification, and then you're like, oh, well, obviously we got to go. Makes sense. then you realize it's too bad. And then they move the goalposts to, well, okay, we were a bit wrong on that, but now we've lost so many guys, it would be terrible for us to pull out. So you go, oh, I see, that kind of makes sense. So you stay a bit longer. And then, they just constantly move the goalposts, and the same as anything else. If it's a gradual thing, because you don't go, well, hang on, you said this 2 years ago, because most people's memories aren't really that kind of tied into it. But I do think that is a ray of light, though, this whole thing of like, most people aren't violent, mate. They're really not.
No. And they're tired. I think a lot of people are war weary, especially from our nations, right? Is when you look at the Afghan papers, and this is really where I come down to a big ray of light. We had the Afghan papers come out, I think, in 2019, 2020 here. It was a project that was put on during the Obama administration to track waste, fraud, and abuse of what was going on overseas. And basically is 400 plus interviews of ambassadors, State Department officials, people in the Pentagon, area commanders in theater in Afghanistan. And for years and years and years, they recorded these guys in their sessions saying, we don't know what the mission is. We don't know what the mission was. We have no idea where the end goal is. And the kicker on that is when you kind of put this all together and you say, as a colonel or general or somebody who was in command or, had staff or, like officers from the DOD, the CIA, the State Department, the FBI, all of these organizations that were in theater with us over there. And you say, we don't really know what the mission is, but we're still sending our men and women out of the wire to do what? This is criminal. And this is where I hope people will pick up, man. The Afghan papers, you can find them out there. I think they're even on audiobook now. And they are absolutely eye-opening and damning for anybody that was in those command positions. And I think, if more people knew, man, they'd be screaming for trials. And, the last thing we would be doing is launching any type of war in the near future that had anything other than a very clear and defined mission.
Mate, we haven't even gone into the COVID stuff, which is another episode in itself, I think. So
maybe you come do my show and we'll talk about COVID.
Mate, I fucking love to. Anytime. Yeah. I'd love to, mate. I'll post it up on here if that's cool with you so people can get that. People come over to we could maybe stick it on the back end of this one or something. We'll figure it out. But no, mate, I'd love to. And one of the things that, obviously it's kind of like they use the same, like you said earlier, language is important. Mm-hmm. And what were they saying at the beginning of COVID? We're in a war against this germ. It's a war. It's the front line. They bring out all this language, mate. And then it allows them to do what they've done, in Afghanistan. But like I said, we'll do that on your pod, mate. We'll do a COVID one on your pod. I'm definitely up for that.
I'm all for crossover shows, man. It's a lot of fun to do those as well.
Let's do it, mate. I'm 100% into it whenever you want. But what's really kind of important is you've got a smile on your face today. You've obviously, happy-go-lucky guy. Despite working in this space, how do you switch off from all of this kind of, let's call it what it is, fucking madness?
Yeah, man, trying to keep it at a low boil, right, is you count your blessings. And I think this is probably, I don't know, I love being able to share this, especially with guys in a military crowd, is like, there are a lot of dark days, right? There's a lot that's been, hoisted upon us. There's a lot of things that we've taken on. And we're just kind of those guys that will shoulder burdens for a lot of people to begin with. And I'll tell you, to be able to start a day and end a day and in the back of your mind, hey, no matter what happens, you're going to be okay. Like, we're going to get through it. You've been through harder things. Today, you woke up in a good bed, you got running water, you've got food, your family's healthy, you're healthy. To do the checklist, take deep breaths and concentrate on some breathing. And if you can get those things down and do, maybe some simple meditation, I mean, it opens your mind to the idea that, listen, I know what they're telling you the world is, but look around. What's your real world, right? Like, what are the people next to you? What are your neighbors like? Those people. They're probably pretty darn good people. That, your community, and they do some amazing things. I'm not saying they're all great. I'm not saying some of them aren't tyrants and some of them aren't pedos or whatever, but most of the people there, they're good people. And you will disagree on a few things, but, like these things I take account for at least twice a day when I wake up and when I go to bed. And I think, to be able to kind of have gotten to this point where and thank God for cannabis here in the United States, it gave me back a lot of empathy because I was very mission oriented. And that change, it was more like, hey man, you can be high drive level, but at the same time, you need to start seeing life from other people's perspective, and understand that maybe they're not as well read, maybe they're not as well studied, maybe they're not as far down the rabbit hole as you are. And if that was you, how would you communicate with you now? So I think that's, I think that's the basis for me to try to, hey, listen, life's going to go on, whether I'm here or not, but today's a good day. Got everything that I could possibly need in terms of essentials and so much more. Thank God, that, listen, if I'm not doing some good things out in the world, I'm not spreading some smiles and some cheer and some charity, while talking about probably the most amazing aspect of life and ideas on earth to people. I mean, boy, if I can't be happy, then Jesus Christ, I don't know who can.
Mate, you mentioned the cannabis there. It's interesting. I'm not a weed guy myself, but I have, as I know a lot of listeners to this have broken through to empathy back. Because, look, man, to be a soldier, you have to be a lot closed off in a lot of ways. You can't go shoot someone in the face if you got empathy. You're going to be thinking about what's his mum going to be like when she gets news about this? What about his kids and that? And instead, you're just like, pew, pew. And you're just like, that's it. You don't think about it. Might have a high five afterwards.
You'll deal with it later.
But, yeah. But I found MDMA and Ket and DMT and stuff. Just going to go down a shopping list of drugs. But they got me to a place of empathy, which I don't need to have drugs for now because I've gone there. It's like, it's just same as everything else. I've been to France. I don't need to go to France to remember what France looks like. I've been there, right?
Right.
Doesn't mean I don't go back on a trip every now and again, but you get where I'm coming from.
Sure.
When it comes to crime and to me, mate, the war on drugs is one of the biggest travesties in the West. And obviously, it doesn't just stop in the West. It spills into every region in the world, taking death and destruction.
We're the world sponsors of it. And that's the thing is you create a black market for something with control of the state on purpose. And I do honestly think it's on purpose. There's a great book, and I don't know how much time you got left, but there's a great book by a guy named Brian Morosky. It's called The Immortality Key. And it talks about why this has happened. The separation of, faith or religion from things like what we're talking about in terms of what the ancients called the glue that kept humanity together. The idea, the cannabis or, MDMA or whatever it is, and psilocybin and the rest of these things, that in a good, healthy setting with people who know how dosages work and things like that, can't make remarkable breakthroughs, not only for themselves, but as in how they relate to their fellow human beings. It's been kept that way. And you see now, I'll tell you what, the world could use some of this and use it together at some time, but sit there and kind of see each other. You know what I mean? And if that could happen, I guarantee, man, just the amount of good Philadelphia and goodwill towards your fellow man would just expound, in a huge way.
We're talking here, we're an infantry soldier and a recon marine. Neither of us grew up hugging trees. Although I am partial to a little tree hug myself now and again. But mate, I think that there's just so much to that, because we have to look at, well, we're allowed. I'm falling into the trap. We're allowed. We're not fucking but we have alcohol, we have other stimulants. Caffeine is a stimulant, and we have all these things that affect the way that we think and our moods, and they're all quote unquote allowed. So then you have to ask yourself, well, why aren't these other things?
Right.
And it's not, there's going to be a reason behind it. And when you start thinking about it and go, well, what could the reason be? What would benefit the state? When there's something I might be a bit wrong on my statistics here, but probably not far off. Something like 300,000 hits of ecstasy get done. When I say ecstasy, MDMA get done every week there's less than 100 deaths every year. So think about that. 300,000 people doing it every week, less than 100 deaths a year. That's a very, very, very safe pastime, which can have life-changing, positive life-changing effects. It's also, it's not addictive. MDMA is not addictive. So you have to ask yourself, well, why wouldn't this be available?
So this was one of my last big revelations in life, right? It happened this year. I'd kind of strayed away from organized religion for a long time, and I think it was March of this year. I went out with a buddy who I consider a shaman, and partook in psilocybin for the first time. And when I did, was one of those things where I was just like, this is incredible. I mean, about, I guess 2.5 grams worth. So, you get some of the effects, and, to sit in nature and watch the sunrise on a very, very cold morning in the early March up here in the Appalachian Mountains, to be part of it and to be with it and to see, my friend, my shaman, and to have that experience, to feel the connection and feel what it is that cannot be explained in terms of spirituality, right? Like you start to have some other thoughts. And one of the first things that happen is you get back into that anger state. Like, why? The question comes up, why is this, something that people are harassed about and caged over and possibly killed over? And that question took me down the study of the plant and its, how it works. And, at any rate, I found this book, that The Immortality Key. If you haven't read it, it's a big book. It's probably better to listen to. This guy, Brian, he's a classically trained linguist. I mean, speaks everything from the Germanic languages to the love languages to, the Latins, the Spanish, anything you can possibly imagine. But he also understands Aramaic, can speak Aramaic, can read Aramaic. He can translate ancient Latin and text and everything else. So he's like Indiana Jones, basically, and he understands biology, and he also understands the background in terms of going into ancient sites and taking bowls and things where they mixed psychedelics over eons, and will do testing on them, and sure as hell has found that a lot of the things that they were doing in religious ceremonies back then had to deal with psychedelics, whether it was ergot from wheat or whether it was mushrooms or, cannabis, whatever it was, or, spiked punch or beer back in the day, especially in the Germanic tribes. So he goes into all of this, and then he kind of concludes with the idea, and he gets into the Catholic Church. He goes down to Rome, and he has such a pedigree that he has access to very secret files down there, and he reads through these texts on this Saint Bruno, and Bruno talked about this and tried to liberate the Catholic Church into, making sure that this wasn't left out, and they persecuted this man and killed him. He talks about the witches that were persecuted and burned because it was mostly matriarchal at that time in terms of the people who prepared the psychedelics for these ceremonies and these, revelations. And so what they did was they kept a lot of what they couldn't suppress in the church, but then they outlawed, and they made the church the center point for where you would have to come and commune with God. And they removed the psychedelic piece from that communion. And I mean, the idea that somebody would do that, and why would you do that? You would do it not to enlighten people spiritually, right? Like your stated goal is, we want enlightenment, we want spiritual enlightenment, but we're going to remove the one damn thing that gives people the real connection, the real experience in spiritual enlightenment. And man, you get into that and you're just, oh, this guy has it documented. He's got it straight from the catacombs of the Catholic Church in their most secret areas in text where they buried this kind of stuff. And that was just kind of this, idea that went throughout society and said, this has to be done. We have to cut people off from these amazingly mind-altering substances so that we have the point of control and we can talk about religion, we can talk about spirituality, but they will never actually really experience it. And if they do, we'll cage them, we'll kill them if we need to, but this cannot get out. And that, I mean, I'm telling you, that's it wrapped a nice little bow on it for me. And I was just like, this has got to stop.
I agree, mate. If you look at the Christian church's efforts to snuff out paganism, and then it's like, look, we're the gatekeepers. You can't speak to God. We can. You have to come to us. You have to pay a tithe. You have to give us a certain amount of the crops that you make, because if you don't, you're going to go to hell.
Yeah.
That's a great business plan. That's a really good business plan.
So evil. It's
evil as fuck. But you know what? It's like very simple. It's like, because I've actually never done psilocybin. I don't know why. I just fucking done everything else. Just don't know how it hasn't come up. But
you come over to Atlanta.
Yeah, but but I've had my moments like that, and you just think, dude, I'm sure you've been the same. Marine, drinking. I'm sure you threw a few punches in your time. I'm sure you pissed your pants. I'm sure you probably woke up in a different town. That shit doesn't happen on this stuff. You don't know what you felt, but you know you felt it. You know that you love people. You know that you love the world. You know that you want to leave it better than you found it. There's no rational reason for that to be illegal. I spoke to a girl recently on Instagram, and she'd been caught. She was actually Native American as well, and she'd been caught with mushrooms. Caught with mushrooms. Imagine saying, I got caught with a tomato. Right, well, you got caught with a tomato? Get in the fucking cage. Imagine that.
Bill Murray, he's got a great quote. He goes, I find it surprising that in this day and age, the most dangerous part of cannabis is being caught with it. And you're like, yeah, that's it.
Like, you could literally lead to your death if you resist that arrest. Mad.
That's right.
But yeah, so it's just this whole thing of like, oh, hang on, I forgot what I was going with this now. But I've done too many fucking drugs, haven't I? But no, it's mad, mate, because you do it and you're like, I feel connected to everyone. I feel a better human being. I want to be nicer to other people. I want to be of service to other people. There's no part of me that's ever done an experience like that and gone, you know what? I'm going to go out and beat the shit out of someone just for the sake of it.
Not even close.
No, not even close. So you're like, well, what can be the reason? And you go, well, it must be because half of the people that do this die of an overdose. Nope. Nobody fucking does. Like, it's safe as fuck. It's probably safer than, it's 100% safer than smoking. It's 100% safer than alcohol. It's probably safer than eating a bowl of cereal that you might choke on.
Yeah.
Like, that's how safe we're talking about here. And then now that there's studies out there to show that it helps PTSD, that it helps all these other conditions, and I think that they're starting to crack. That they are starting to crack on this stuff. But it's like, look how fast they push through vaccines. And we're still in trials for MDMA. We're still in trials for cannabis. Cannabis is still a scheduled drug. Shut up. Get out. You're lying. It's absolute lies. And it's quite clearly control and manipulation. And to anyone listening, you have to remember the state is literally stopping you becoming a better human being by design. Am I mad or am I on the right track here, do you think?
You're madly correct, brother. I mean, I mean, and that's the thing is, I will tell people, like I drank way too much in the Marine Corps. Like but it was acceptable, right? It was like, hey, when you're off, you go and you get hammered, and that's it, right? Like it's a good time. People get in fights. You can't make good warriors out of people that are looking at the humanity of people, and that's obviously why it is the way it is there. Which is going to be very interesting in Canada, coming up because, for a couple of years now, those guys have had access and are, very much allowed, even while on duty. Not everybody, but a lot of people are allowed, as long as it was the night before, you're good. But yeah, this idea of partaking, especially in the psychedelics, I will tell people, be in a calm place, be in a good place. Don't be around a ton of people. Try to, natural settings are a great thing. If you can, sit and be at peace in nature with, maybe one other person, somebody that can kind of help guide you through some things. And there's some, real work that can be done, especially for, people who are, the former warriors, right? Like these guys need to work through some things, and they're probably working through things even today because that's just their spirit. They are, people who are looking at what's on the horizon. They're preparing for what's on the horizon. They're probably dealing with some things in terms of gaming things like that in their thoughts, their fears, their aspirations. And I'll tell you, if you're comfortable with even some of the smaller doses, is like, I'll tell you, there's real work to be done for the spirit at, some super high doses of THC. I'm saying work into those with psilocybin very gently. And find out where you're comfortable. And if you enjoy that kind of thing, if it makes you a better person, share it with others and do it, be smart, and obviously don't get yourself arrested and harassed and caged and killed. But, as a good functioning person that understands the real importance of, putting in the work beforehand and preparing for, those type of things, there's no problem with, there should be no issue with you going out and doing those type of things for yourself and for, people that you love, that you want to see, do better in life.
Mate, I look at it like it's like the gym of your mind. You shouldn't go, if you've never been at the gym before, don't go in, put 100 on the bench and try and be Barry and try and rep 100 on your own without a spotter.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. Like the environment is important, like you said, mate. Like the person that you're with. If you're in a bad relationship, don't go and do it with the person you're in a bad relationship with, because it's going to go badly. Of course it is. The same way that watching a movie with is going to go badly, because you argue about everything.
Yeah.
Like it's like that stuff. There was a former special forces guy on TV. He did a thing on TV where he took drugs live on TV. And this was a while ago, but he posted about it recently, and he was like, "Oh, it was awful. Stay away from drugs and stuff." And I was like, "Oh, I can't have this. I've got to talk about this." I'm like, "Dude, you had fucking TV cameras and lights put in your face, a bunch of strangers around you, and you have unresolved issues from your childhood and your service. No shit, it's gonna go bad."
If there was a recipe for disaster, that's it.
That wasn't the drugs, mate. That was everything about the situation. That was everything about like your unresolved issues. And I felt like I had to speak out about that, because I thought this is like might turn someone away from it that might really kind of benefit from it. But like me, it's like we said earlier, rights come with responsibility.
Yeah.
So do these substances. You got to use them. God knows I have abused some drugs in my time, big time.
Yeah.
But I've also used some responsibly, and they've come up with some, great life-changing results. Mate, before we wrap up on this, I want to talk about, just let people know you've got the Radical Pod going on. What else have you got going on? Where can people connect with you, everything like that?
Yeah, Radical Pod is definitely the place if you're looking for content that I've done in the past. It's there. I've got some merchandise is creeping across, but all the podcatchers have Radical on there. It's Radical with Shane Hazel, and on Twitter I'm Shane T Hazel. I'm kind of spicy on there. I like to drop the fuck word a lot and really kind of take on tyrants. But I'm also running for governor down here in the state of Georgia. And, expectations of trying to win, I'm really looking for 5 to 10% of the population that can draw the line in the sand and say enough of this bullshit. And I think we're in a great time for that. Is we don't need 100%, we don't even need 50%. I need about 5 to 10% of people, not only here but just everywhere, to just say, hey, listen, we're peaceful people, you got to leave us alone. And at that point, try to do something a little bit different from what we've always done. So yeah, those are the things I'm doing. If anybody wants to contact me, Shane at Radical Pod is my email. And I will get to it as quickly as I can. Things are, I don't know, they've kind of blown up a little bit recently. So, big thanks for having me on, and a hell of a discussion. I can't wait to have you on my show. We're going to have a good time.
Mate, I'm looking forward to it, mate. And one thing I just find so funny is like, you're a radical because you believe in leaving people alone and not putting people in cages. That is just hilarious.
I adopted it. My state was already, the United States was already calling us radicals as libertarians, as veterans, and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, yeah, if that's radical, cool. I'll just adopt it.
I love it, mate. And you have the coolest intro on that podcast as well. Like, it fires me up, mate. I'm ready to I'm ready to go in the gym and bench 100 when that comes on. It's brilliant stuff. But mate, thanks so much for coming on today, mate. It's absolutely flown by, and I'm looking forward to chatting again soon.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Hope you enjoyed that one today, guys. I had a great time, so thanks for being here with it. As ever, we ask that if you did enjoy today's podcast, please go and follow Shane on social media. He's linked up in the show notes. Check out his Radical Pod. And also, if you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with a friend. Please bring a friend along. I've had a long day. All right, just leave me alone. Right, but please go and bring a friend along. Please leave a review on iTunes if you enjoyed it. I know not everyone listens to iTunes, but even if you don't listen on there, and if you do have iTunes on your phone and Apple Podcasts, if you could go on, leave us a review. It does help us to bring in more guests and all that kind of stuff and keep the podcast going. We'll leave it at that today, guys. I've had a great time on today's podcast. It's time for me to go home now and get my gym on. So thanks very much to everybody listening, and I'll catch you next time, and I love you. Bye.
Yeah. Listen. Shout out Teaser. You told me not to worry, and you wouldn't break my heart. You told me you were sorry, yeah, my whole world fell apart. You said it's not my fault, and yeah, I've never done you wrong. I'm grinding to a halt, now I can see you're moving on. I promised I'd get better, and I told you things would change. You keep me to the gutter, yeah, I'll never be the same. I've gotta let you go, now live your life and spread your wings. And yeah, you put on quite a show, and pulled the puppet strings. And are you sure that you don't want me? Remember all the pain, or maybe you should thank me. It's your loss and my gain. I'm leaving now forever, I won't hang my head in shame. But yeah, you've taken me for granted, and you should feel ashamed. You sold a dream to all of us, a dream that we'd all die for, a reason for us all to live and something we could fight for. I might just help a man up to his feet or hold a newborn, but no matter what I do, my hands remembering my rifle, yeah.
Life's hard, I know that, still wouldn't change shit. I wouldn't go back, yeah, I wouldn't go back. Feelings I hold back, memories fade, yeah, they go fast, yeah, they go fast. Good times to come and go, survive the highs and lows. Just take it step by step, I guess, yeah, I suppose. Good times to come and go, survive the highs and lows. Just take it step by step, I guess, yeah, I suppose.